Here's a long-form, chilling horror story for your YouTube video. The baby monitor picked up something that wasn't my baby. When my daughter was born, I thought the hardest part would be the sleepless nights, the endless feedings, and the overwhelming anxiety of being a first-time parent. But I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that something else was watching my baby, and it wasn't me. A mother's instinct. It all started 3 months ago. My husband and I had just moved into a new house, a charming but slightly worn-down colonial on the outskirts of town. It wasn't perfect, but it had space, a big backyard, and a nursery that overlooked the garden. It felt like the perfect place to raise our daughter, Emily. I was a light sleeper even before she was born, but after she arrived, my paranoia intensified. I checked on her constantly, every whimper making my heart race. So, naturally, we got a baby monitor, a high-tech one with video and audio, so I could watch her from anywhere in the house. At first, it was comforting, until I started hearing things that shouldn't be there. Whispers in the night. The first time it happened, I was half asleep, lying in bed while my husband snored beside me. I had the monitor on my nightstand, the screen glowing softly in the darkness. Emily was sleeping peacefully in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling. Then, through the static of the monitor, I heard it, a whisper. At first, I thought it was just the sound of the baby monitor picking up interference. Maybe the neighbor's radio or some electrical glitch. But then, the whisper became clearer. I sat up, staring at the screen. Emily was still asleep, her little hand curled near her face. But the whispering continued, and then I heard my daughter's name, Emily. I gasped, grabbing my husband's arm. "Did you hear that?" He groaned, barely waking up. "Hear what?" I pointed at the monitor, my hands trembling. "Someone just said Emily's name." He squinted at the screen. "It's just interference. Go back to sleep." I wanted to believe him, but deep down I knew better. The shadow in the crib. The next night, I was more alert. I turned up the volume on the monitor, listening carefully for anything unusual. For a while, everything was normal. The sound of Emily's soft breathing, the occasional rustle of blankets. Then, at exactly 3:14 a.m., the screen glitched. The video feed flickered, lines of static distorting the image for a moment before it stabilized. But when it did, my stomach dropped. Because I wasn't just seeing my daughter in the crib, there was something else in there with her. A shadow. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, maybe a stuffed animal casting a weird shadow. But then, the shadow moved, not like a normal shadow. This thing shifted, like it was separate from the crib entirely, like it was standing over her. I bolted from the bed, sprinting to the nursery. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. I threw the door open, expecting to see nothing. Emily was sleeping peacefully, alone. The crib was empty except for her. I checked the closet, the curtains, under the crib. Nothing. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it was a glitch in the camera. Maybe I was overtired. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something wrong. The baby monitor camera, it had been moved. Someone or something had turned it to face the closet instead of the crib. I didn't sleep that night. The laughter. After that, things escalated. Every night, I watched the monitor like a hawk. Some nights, the whispers came back. Other nights, the screen would flicker and glitch, showing dark figures for split seconds before returning to normal. Then, one night, I heard laughter. It wasn't Emily's. It was deep, raspy, and wrong, like a grown man trying to mimic a baby's giggle. It sent ice through my veins. I grabbed my phone and started recording the audio directly from the monitor. The laughter continued, growing louder, closer. I ran to the nursery, but the second I opened the door, silence. Emily was still fast asleep, but the rocking chair in the corner was swaying, slowly, as if someone had just been sitting there, watching. The truth about the house. I couldn't take it anymore. The next day, I did some digging. I searched online, looking for anything about our house's history. At first, nothing stood out, just an old house built in the 1930s. But then, I found an old newspaper article buried in a local archive, and it made my blood run cold. Local tragedy, infant found dead in crib, cause unknown. The article was from 1963. The baby, a girl named Emily, had died mysteriously in her crib. No cause of death was ever determined. The parents had moved away shortly after, and the house remained abandoned for years before being sold again. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Emily? The baby had the same name as my daughter. Was that just a coincidence? Or was something trying to take her place? That night, I made a decision. We were leaving. I started packing as soon as the sun set, throwing clothes into bags, grabbing essentials. My husband thought I was overreacting, but I didn't care. Then, at exactly 3:14 a.m., the baby monitor turned on by itself. I hadn't touched it. The screen flickered, and when the video feed appeared, I saw something that made my blood freeze. The crib was empty. Emily was gone. I screamed, running to the nursery. I threw the door open, my heart pounding out of my chest, and there, in the crib, was her. Not Emily, not my daughter, but something else. It looked like her. Same tiny hands, same soft curls, but its eyes were wrong, black, hollow, smiling. And then it whispered, "Mommy." I don't remember much after that. Just grabbing Emily, running out of the house, and never looking back. We never went back. We sold the house immediately, took a loss, and moved across the country. But sometimes, late at night, the baby monitor still turns on by itself, and I swear I can hear something breathing on the other end. Final thoughts. If you ever hear strange sounds through a baby monitor, if you ever see something that shouldn't be there, leave before it decides it wants your child instead. This long-form horror story is designed to terrify your audience and keep them hooked until the very end. Let me know if you want any modifications or if you need more stories like this for your channel. Here's a terrifying long-form horror story for your YouTube channel. The library book that knows my name. I've always loved libraries. The scent of old paper, the quiet hum of whispered conversations, the way time seems to slow down between the shelves. I never imagined a book would call to me. I never imagined a book would know my name. But it did, and it was the beginning of something I couldn't escape. The book that shouldn't exist. It started on a rainy afternoon. I had been spending a lot of time at the town library, researching for a paper I was writing. The library itself was old. One of those historic buildings with towering wooden shelves and stained glass windows that let in thin beams of light, making the dust in the air look almost magical. I had been there for hours, flipping through history books, when I felt watched. At first, I brushed it off, just my imagination. But then as I walked down one of the aisles, I saw something strange. A book. Not just any book. A black leather-bound book sitting on a shelf that looked dustier than the rest. There was no title on the spine, no markings on the cover. It was just there. Curious, I reached out and pulled it free. That was when I saw the name. My name. It was etched onto the cover in thin, delicate lettering. Ethan Collins. I felt my stomach drop. This had to be some kind of joke, right? Maybe a coincidence? But as I flipped through the pages, my hands started to tremble. Because the book wasn't blank, it was already filled. And the words inside were about me. My life, written in ink. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. The pages were filled with my memories, not just big life events, but specific details that no one else should know. Ethan Collins, born April 12th, favorite childhood toy, a stuffed bear named Bruno. First scar, left knee, age 5, fell off his bike. I flipped through the pages faster, my breath catching in my throat. Every detail was there. The way I failed my first math test in 6th grade, the way I cried alone in my room after my first breakup, even things I had never told anyone. Like the time I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a shadow standing at the foot of my bed. That was there too. But it didn't stop at my past, because as I turned the pages, I reached the present, and then the future. The predictions, the words on the page, matched exactly what I was doing at that moment. Ethan Collins sits in the town library, fingers gripping the edges of the book, his breath uneven as he reads these very words. I slammed the book shut. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. This wasn't possible. Someone had to be playing a prank on me. Right? I looked around expecting to see someone watching me, laughing from behind a bookshelf. But the library was empty. And then, against every instinct screaming at me to stop, I flipped to the next page and read. Ethan Collins will hear a noise behind him. He will turn around, but there will be no one there. A sharp creak echoed from behind me. My blood ran cold. Slowly, I turned. There was nothing. Just the empty aisle, just rows and rows of silent books. I should have stopped. I should have put the book back. But I didn't, because my hands were already flipping to the next page. The warning, the next entry was different. It wasn't just a simple sentence predicting my next move. It was a warning. Ethan Collins will make a choice. He can leave the book behind or he can keep reading. If he keeps reading, he will not leave this library alone. My throat went dry. I slammed the book shut and shoved it back onto the shelf. My breathing was ragged, my skin slick with cold sweat. This wasn't just a book. It was something else, something that shouldn't exist. I needed to leave. Now. But as I turned to walk away, I heard it. A whisper, right next to my ear. Keep reading, Ethan? I ran. I didn't stop until I was home, my hands still shaking. I tried to convince myself that it had all been some elaborate prank, some weird hallucination caused by exhaustion. But that night, I woke up to find something on my nightstand. The book. The same black leather-bound book, with my name still etched into the cover. I threw it across the room, but when I woke up the next morning, it was back, sitting neatly on my nightstand, waiting. The final page. For days, I tried everything to get rid of it. I burned it. It reappeared. I shredded it. It put itself back together. No matter what I did, it always came back. And every time I opened it, the pages continued to update. It knew what I was doing, what I was thinking. Then, one night, I opened it and saw the final entry. A single sentence. Ethan Collins will read these words and understand that it is too late. A knock came from my window. My breath hitched. I turned, slowly. Outside, in the darkness, something was watching me. A figure, tall, shadowy, and holding a book. The ending that never ends. I don't know what to do. The book still updates itself. It's writing even now as I type this story. It says I'm almost at the end, but it also says that you, the person reading this, now know too much. It says the book will find you next. If you ever see a book with your name on it, don't read it. Don't even touch it, because once you do, it never lets you go. This horror story is crafted to keep your viewers glued to their screens, with tension, suspense, and a terrifying ending that makes them question their own reality. Let me know if you want any changes or more stories like this. The farmhouse where no one survives a night. Some places should be left alone. Some houses were never meant to be lived in, and some warnings should never be ignored. This is the story of Blackwood Farm, a place where no one has survived a single night, and now I know why. The last rental. I found the listing by accident. I had been driving cross-country, looking for a place to stay the night. Motels were overpriced, and I figured a quiet farmhouse in the middle of nowhere would be peaceful. The Airbnb listing described it as a rustic countryside retreat, cheap, remote, and available immediately. The pictures showed an old but well-maintained farmhouse, sitting alone in a vast field, with rolling hills in the background. It was perfect, or so I thought. I booked it without reading the reviews. Big mistake. The drive to Blackwood Farm. The drive was long, the roads getting narrower as the sun began to set. By the time I reached the property, the sky had turned a deep shade of red. The farmhouse loomed in the distance, bigger than I expected. The paint was peeling, the windows dark and empty. A single porch light flickered, buzzing like an old street lamp. As I pulled up, I noticed something strange. The front door was already open. I hesitated. Maybe the owner had left it that way for me? Stepping out of my car, I glanced around. No other houses, no streetlights, just miles and miles of emptiness. A cold wind blew through the fields, making the tall grass sway. I felt like something was watching me. The warning inside. The farmhouse smelled of dust and old wood. The furniture was outdated, but everything seemed normal at first. Then I found the note. A single sheet of paper sat on the kitchen table. The handwriting was rushed, almost frantic. Do not stay past midnight. Lock your doors. Do not answer if you hear knocking. Leave at first light. You have been warned. My stomach twisted. Was this some kind of joke? I checked my phone. No signal. Of course. Despite the unease creeping up my spine, I told myself it was just a prank left by a previous guest. Some kind of local legend to scare tourists. I should have left right then, but I didn't. The first signs. The house was eerily quiet. Not even the usual sounds of an old building settling. I locked the doors, just in case, and settled into one of the bedrooms upstairs. That's when I noticed something wrong with the mirror. It was old, with a frame of cracked wood, but the reflection felt off. When I moved, my reflection seemed to hesitate, a fraction of a second too slow, like it was struggling to keep up. A chill ran down my spine. I turned away from the mirror, and that's when I heard it. A whisper. Right outside the bedroom door. The knocking, I froze. The sound came again. Knock, knock, knock. Soft, deliberate. Someone was at the front door. I checked my phone. Still no service. The note's warning echoed in my mind. Do not answer if you hear knocking. I held my breath, listening. Then from the hallway outside my room, another knock. This time it came from inside the house. My pulse pounded in my ears. Something wasn't right. Someone had gotten inside. And then I heard it. A voice, low and distorted. Let me in. The visitor. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The voice came again, closer now. I know you're in there. I slowly reached for the bedroom door, locking it as quietly as I could. My hands were slick with sweat. A shadow passed under the doorframe. Something was standing just outside my room. The whispering stopped, and something scratched at the door. Not like fingernails, like something with claws. Midnight comes. I checked the clock. 11:59 p.m. The house was silent. And then the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the room. My breath came in shallow gasps as I reached for my phone, using the dim screen as a flashlight. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy. They moved through the house, dragging something across the floor. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then, the bedroom door handle twisted. The thing in the dark, I pressed myself against the wall. The door should have been locked, but it slowly creaked open. Something stood there in the darkness. Tall, shadowy. Its limbs too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was grinning. The air turned ice cold as it took a step forward. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't move. Then, the thing whispered, "No one survives the night." The room spun, and then, everything went black. The escape. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window. I was outside, lying in the field, my clothes soaked in morning dew. The farmhouse was gone, not abandoned, not burned down. Just gone, like it had never been there. I staggered to my feet, my head pounding. In my pocket I found something cold, a rusted key, and attached to it, a note. One last message. You survived, but it knows you now, and it will come back for you. I looked around. The empty fields stretched for miles, but deep down I knew I wasn't alone. Final warning. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know how I got out, but I know this. If you ever see a listing for Blackwood Farm, don't book it. Don't visit. And if you ever hear knocking in the middle of the night, don't answer, because next time, there might not be a sunrise.